I want to pick up real quickly in Psalm 7. We left off in verse 5, the end of verse 5, last Friday. David pursuing God in a time of injustice, slander, and he's asking God, if there's any truth to this, God, then I'll bear the consequences. But then we see this word Selah, which is a rest or a break in the psalm, and generally a turn in the tone of the psalm or the message of the psalm. And then verse 6, look at what David says. Arise, O Lord, in thine anger. Lift up thyself because of the rage of mine enemies. And awake for me to the judgment that thou hast commanded. So shall the congregation of the people compass thee about. For their sakes, therefore, return now on high. The Lord shall judge the people. Judge me, O Lord, according to my righteousness, according to mine integrity that is in me. O let the wickedness of the wicked come to an end, but establish the just. For the righteous God trieth the hearts and reigns. So in big picture, David's praying for justice, which is a good prayer to pray, okay? We hear a lot of talk about justice and social justice in our world today, and boy, is the American church in many cases so off track. When the American church forsakes the gospel and enters into the temporal, man-made systems and solutions of social justice, the church is getting off mission, because ultimate justice, pure justice, perfect justice is only going to be brought about by Jesus. It's only found in Jesus. And David is a living, vibrant example in this psalm that until Jesus brings justice, there will always be on planet Earth injustice. Okay, we're not going to fix it all. Now, we can build and should build better systems, and the system should be held accountable when it fails. The system should work and be called on when it works. But man-made systems are imperfect, and when we tear down one system and replace it with another, that system's going to be equally imperfect. And man-made justice is always going to be fraught with alternate forms of injustice. So all that man can do, sinful man, is take injustice and replace it with an alternate form of injustice, and then replace it with an alternate form of injustice, because without God, without His Word, without God's Spirit, there really is going to be no true justice. So the ultimate solution is that God is the judge, and God will come and will reign on high and will bring about final vindication, final justice. And David is praying for that to happen in his own life, in his own context. But we know, with a 2,000, 3,000 year view of this, there's a much bigger context to it, and there's a much bigger kind of justice. This isn't just a temporary Israeli justice or Kingdom of Israel justice. This isn't just a temporary King of Israel, David life justice. This is a big, cosmic, comprehensive justice for a much bigger, broader, more eternal kingdom that we're a part of. But nonetheless, David is laying this in God's hands. He's saying, God, you arise. You bring about justice. I want you to see verse 6 quickly, and then we'll call it for the day. Arise, O Lord, in thine anger. Lift up thyself because of the rage of mine enemies. Now, this is interesting. Is it okay to pray that God's anger would be expressed? Of course. We've talked about God's anger before, and there's so much I would like to say, but God's anger is perfect. It's pure. It's holy. It's a part of His love. There is no conflict between God's love and God's anger. If someone assaulted my wife or daughter, you would see me get quickly angry and insert that anger into that situation and do justice and bring vindication. I would rise to the defense of the innocent in anger. And you would say, that's perfect, that's pure, that's just anger, that's righteous anger. So God's anger is always righteous. There's no emotion to it. There's no human character quality to it. No, it's a perfect, unchanging quality of His nature that God, because He is holy and loving, He is always righteously angry at wickedness and sin and injustice. So David's simply praying for that anger to rise and to come to bear. Look at this next phrase. This is interesting to me. Lift up thyself because of the rage of mine enemies. Now, David is not only praying that God would come forward, in anger, but he's praying that God would be advanced. He's praying that God would be, in some sense, exalted, glorified. And in this is something we read and we know about in Romans 8:28, that God works all things together for good. One of the beautiful outflows of the story of Scripture is that even when injustice happens, even when sin and wickedness unfolds, God is so powerful and so providential and so omnipotent, all-powerful, that he is going to turn sin on its head. He's going to use injustice in the end for the purposes of glorifying him and glorifying righteousness. I don't remember which scholar or which early church father said it this way, but there's this illustration of two tracks. Justice and righteousness and glory and goodness runs on one track. Injustice and sin and wickedness is running on another track, and they're simultaneously existing in time and space, but there's an intersection out in front of us, and the destination, they both arrive at the same destination, and the destination is Jesus exalted, preeminent, as perfect, righteous King, and judgment being reckoned with on all unrighteousness, that in the end, God is exalted. So David understands that God can be exalted through injustice. Now, the personal application of this, my friend, is think about your injustice. Have you thought through the person that's spinning the false narrative, the person that's hurting you, the person that's politicking and backstabbing and competitive towards you, the situations in your life where injustice has unfolded of any kind? Have you stopped to think God will use that injustice to glorify himself, that he will turn it on its head? One of the ways he will do that in the short term, the near term, is by using your spiritual response, by using your spiritual maturity, your grace, your mercy, your forgiveness will glorify him. I had a friend not long ago that reached out to me, and he was aware of just some personal injustice I had faced, just private. I won't go into the story, can't really go into the story, but he was aware of it. And he said to me in private conversation, he said, "I've watched that." He said, "I've been tracking that." And he said, "I've been watching how you're responding." And he said, "You're happy, you're joyful, you're serving the Lord, you're going forward, and you're letting God be your just vindicator." And he said, "That's speaking volumes to a lot of people." And my friend, I was so happy to hear that God could be glorified in that way. So let God be glorified in your injustice. And I'll see you tomorrow.